Yes, we are back again here at the AWS Sydney Summit. We are in the final stretch, the final home stretch, with my mate here, Matt Fitzgerald. I'm your host, Dean Samuels, Solutions Architect Manager for Hong Kong and Taiwan. We're fortunate to have Matt back on stage again. You would have seen him in previous sessions hosting some other sessions, but he is here as a guest host because Matt actually has quite a unique experience across the Amazon brand. You've actually been with Amazon for quite a number of years, Matt. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about your history with Amazon?
Okay, so I actually started with AWS as a solutions architect in Seattle back in 2013. So I moved with my family to Seattle, started the role as solution architect for the Pacific Northwest region, the mid-market named accounts. And then a really cool opportunity came up on the retail side of the business, which was helping them drive adoption of AWS within the retail organization.
Right.
So effectively, you could say I was leading the cloud initiative for the retail side of the business.
Right.
And I built the team around that.
And so I guess your unique experience is that whilst you were still under the Amazon banner, moving to Amazon.com, you're essentially a customer of AWS, because Amazon.com is effectively a customer of AWS, is that right?
Exactly, yeah. So, you know, we're a very large customer of AWS, large enterprise customer. And, you know, and that was one of the things, and we always have been a large customer of AWS. And so we wanted to sort of, I guess, solidify that, that identity of being a large enterprise customer and be able to take some of the learnings that we've seen in the retail side of the business. One, like we are the same company, so we wanted to help influence the AWS roadmap so all of the customers of AWS could take advantage of some of the things we were doing on the retail side of business. And likewise, you know, we wanted to be I guess, a customer of AWS services that we may not have ever sort of found a use case for certain things.
Yeah, so, absolutely. Yeah, it's an interesting thing I've found with Amazon in general, where we have a lot of experiences internally, whether it's around technology, processes, different mechanisms or ways of doing things, and really want to share that with our customers as well.
No, that's fine. No, go ahead.
Yeah, so maybe let's talk a little bit about your time at Amazon.com and some of the projects you were working on. You actually led a team that was responsible for the migration of Amazon.com to AWS.
Yeah, so I say that yes, I did that, and no, I didn't do that. So yes, in that I was responsible for a team that would put some governance and structure around the adoption of AWS. But at the same time, I wasn't going around with a stick hitting people saying, you got to adopt this AWS service, or you have to do this, you have to do that. At the end of the day, we wanted to get out of the way. We wanted to minimize friction so engineers could get on with doing what they do best, which is innovate quickly, right? And if you add too much red tape in, then that doesn't happen.
Yeah, it was about that bureaucracy that Mixie was actually talking about in the previous session. If you have that in the way, as those try and put those guardrails in, it does stifle that innovation, right?
Exactly, and so essentially what we built, you could say, other large enterprises have done it. We, a cloud center of excellence team.
Yep.
So as I said, we focused on some of the governance. So when you think about governance, think about the cross-cutting concerns within the company. So security, compliance, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Consumption, procurement, right, is another one. So what you end up seeing in enterprises because the cloud is so accessible, AWS is so accessible now, anyone can create an account, get a credit card, and you can start. But what happens is that other aspects of that are critical to IT sort of start spiraling out of control. Security can go off on a tangent, and you just don't have that governance to sort of hold it together. So we needed to create the best practices. We needed to work with security teams internally to say, okay, if we're going to do this, how do we do it in the right way?
Absolutely. And you mentioned Cloud Center of Excellence, or CCOE, and when we work with a lot of enterprise customers who are starting their journey into the cloud, a critical part of that journey, and preferably early in that journey, is the establishment of that CCOE. So can you maybe tell the audience a little bit about how is the CCOE structured? What's its key objectives or goals? Yeah,
so I don't want to be too prescriptive in how. Well, one, I can't really say how we, because every enterprise is different. So you need to structure your cloud center of excellence around the constructs that are already in place. Now, saying that, that doesn't mean that you don't change some of those constructs, because when you go all in on the cloud, or you're making, you're starting on this journey to the cloud, and which I don't even really like the journey to the cloud, because the journey implies there's an end. Really, there is no end. There's this constant iteration moving on. So there is a culture that needs to be addressed for some customers. But within Amazon.com, we've got a very unique culture that's centered around builders already. So didn't have to do much in terms of the culture side of things.
Right.
But yeah, so I would say it is really predicated on how the enterprise functions, and then that's how you should look at building a center of excellence.
Absolutely.
Find the things that are broken, fix those, get out of the way of the engineers.
Yeah, and you can think of the Cloud Center of Excellence, CCOE, really as that single-threaded team that is really focused on that cloud journey. Now, when we get a ball up on stage, it means the questions come in, so please, if you have any questions, post it to the chat. So we have a question from Neo Shadow. What is an enterprise customer?
That's a great question.
How do you define it?
I guess it depends who you ask.
Yeah.
Whether you ask a sales guy or you ask, someone like myself. So I guess my definition of an enterprise customer would be a customer that's come from a traditional way of operating IT. So if you look at a lot of startups today, they're cloud first from day one, right? They've never had to run a data center. They've never had to raise capital, to buy infrastructure. They've never had to depreciate that infrastructure and so on. So I think, there's also been the typical license, when you purchase license seats in order to operate software. I think when you put all of that together, that is what I would consider an enterprise customer. And even those enterprise customers today that are moving to the cloud, I would say the ones that are operating in some hybrid sort of traditional model and the cloud model, I would consider them enterprises. But I think we're going to get to a point one day where the enterprise will be cloud from the start. And I think we may need to redefine what we mean by enterprise.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, even enterprise, at the enterprise segment, you have very different enterprise, classifications, whether it's digital native business, born in the cloud, enterprise businesses, you mentioned traditional as well. Now, enterprises sometimes have a bit of complexity to not only the technology landscape that they might have, but also the different groups that you might have to actually deal with, right? It's not just a single IT group, for example.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and that was the way we functioned within Amazon. We publicly talk about two pizza teams, and that all the teams are we have autonomous development teams decoupled from each other so that we can move quickly. And how do you sort of wrangle that and sort of get them all moving in the right direction? So it goes back to removing that friction side of things, but every enterprise is different. So.
Right. Okay. And so I've got a couple of questions here. What does the end state in AWS look like for Amazon, and what's next on the journey?
What does the end state in AWS? You mean what does Amazon's journey to AWS look like? End state.
End state.
So I've already talked about this. I don't prescribe this. I don't prescribe there being an end state for cloud.
Right.
I think you're always going to see AWS innovating, creating new products, new features, and there's always going to be a need for those, right? So the take-home message for me is that enterprises or businesses need to focus on their core business. And if they're busy trying to build big data platforms, or they're trying to build queuing systems, and that's not their core business, then I think there's room for optimization, and I think we should be able to take advantage of new things as they become available. So I think all customers, regardless of who they are, should always be looking at, okay, what are we building? What's out there now? Do we still need to take a dependency on this internal thing, or can we now leverage the new thing that AWS has built so that we can reallocate our resources to build things relevant to them?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. We have it's not actually a question, it's more a statement. Actually, this is from my brother, Clive Samuels. I would like to send a shout out to my brother Dean, doing a great job at the summit, from his brother in the US. It's, I think, 3 a.m. in the US, so Clive, thank you very much for staying up. He says he's an enterprise architect. And he also says, by the way, Windows and VMware rocks. Well, I was going to give $100 your way for complimenting me. I think I'm going to take that $100 back, so sorry, Clive. And so if we continue down the path of the Cloud Center of Excellence, Matt, can you maybe talk through what some of the functions are of a CCOE?
Yeah, so I guess obviously, the Cloud Center of Excellence is the conduit between the business and AWS. I think it's easier for AWS to work with the customer when they're working with a defined sort of, whether it's a virtual or physical team, to, I guess, capture requirements.
Ooh, there you go. You're welcome.
I think they serve a function in terms of disseminating information that's coming out of AWS. Once again, like, engineers are pretty smart guys. They're going to go off and find things out for themselves in due course, but I think it's always good to have a relationship with your AWS account rep who's able to sort of, hey, I'm going to come to the Center of Excellence. Here's what our roadmap may look like, and maybe you can find some opportunities within the company. And then the Cloud Center of Excellence can, internally can communicate that. They can build, workshops or training around it and pull like solutions architects in or ProServe if they need to help, help the customer move along. So I think the Cloud Center of Excellence is, as I said, like we want to offer value but get out of the way of the the innovation.
Awesome. Happy to take another question, Matt?
Yes.
Awesome. So we got a question from Skull Crusher for Life. You've been crushing it today, Skull Crusher, because you've been sending out in those good, great questions. For those outside AWS, do you have any guides for how the different positions from AWS Solutions Architect versus Senior Engineer help you meet your cloud needs? Who is the first contact, and when does the next role help advance your project? I guess it's around the evolution of the role in AWS. Like yourself, has moved from a solutions architect on AWS across to Amazon.com and now as an evangelist. So any, I guess, advice or guidance that you would give to an aspiring evangelist, maybe?
My career has always been around what's interests me at the time. So I don't. No one put a sign in front of me and said, "Hey, you have to move left or you have to move right because your job's going to be deprecated at some point." If that's the question, I would say go with where your interests are. And moving from a solution architect working with customers around Pacific Northwest to .com, I just saw .com as a huge challenge.
Yep.
It's just another customer, right? And I wanted a piece of that. So and I figured if I can navigate my way around there, then I think it's going to be good for my resume, and I think it has been.
Yep.
So
yeah, it's great advice. At the end of the day, you own your own career, right? So it's,
exactly.
Looking for those opportunities or making those opportunities for yourself.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And so if we look at when the time towards the end of the time you were with Amazon.com and moved across, I'm sure you saw some successes during your time there. How was the success measured? How was the success really with the CCOE measured? Like
any other enterprise, you need to have some measures of success in place in order to gauge whether you're doing the right things. And like everyone else, we're big enterprise customer, as I said. Did I say we're a big enterprise customer?
Yeah,
we're a big enterprise customer. So we spend a lot of money, right? And so we had goals around reducing spend. That's just simple things that like any other customer would have. We may have had goals around adopting certain products. Like there's many things. Teams themselves often created internal goals in order to move or to create new architectures on top of AWS. And we had content goals just like within an event. So we were effectively an internal evangelism team in .com. So we had goals around how many people we reached, that kind of stuff.
Okay,
so
right.
But the goals, there's moving targets, so then the goals change all the time. But yeah, we had goals, and you need to find out what works for your business and measure them and be,
Right. Yep.
change things when they're not working out.
Absolutely. And so you mentioned before about how you don't see that there's an end to the journey. It's always continuing on, right? So
has there ever been an end to the IT journey?
No, that's right. Exactly.
No.
And so, does CCOE, does this Cloud Center of Excellence have an end life?
I think the Cloud Center of Excellence is going to evolve just like the adoption of various IT technologies. I think as new things come out, your Cloud Center of Excellence is going to adjust and in the case at Amazon now, what started as a smaller team, we now have a more sort of structured effort in place to drive a lot of these things. So I think that when it becomes a core part of the business, the enterprise business, I think you'll see the Cloud Center of Excellence mature and form a more rigid business entity. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, I think we come to the end of the session. Really, I do appreciate all the info you've given us regarding Amazon.com and its move to AWS. There's also a lot of content actually out there which Amazon.com and AWS together do publish for our customers to learn themselves. But Matt, thanks once again. I'm sure we'll see you on stage sometime in the very, very near future.
Thanks very much.
Thanks to everyone for listening. We'll be looking over to our This Is My Architecture session fairly soon, so please stay tuned.
Thank you.